Coming to arrivals on any central line communication line direct system, you have to understand its directions, how it works on all position, location, and track lines. I'll say this once, and I'm only going to say this line calculation streamline. Without calculation, very powerful line center locations into adaptation of spiritual force. Connections of Alan Watts. We already know who he is in set location system. He was a mantra. He was a guru. He was a sensei. Calculation line interference. He was a master in his own correlation setting of nature, right? So in that set location system, you probably heard this over and over again. Calculation setting. A man who thinks all the time but has nothing to do but think about thoughts. Try to understand that concept. A man who thinks all the time has nothing to do but create about thoughts. Creating thoughts that don't create anything. You're thinking. You're not traveling. So it's a person that thinks all the time. There's nothing there. What are you creating? You're talking. Stop talking. Start creating here. It's an open concept here, guys. It's pretty standard when you come in that communication with system. Understanding what you're saying is all calculated and modified. How do you set location in your systems? Okay, I keep saying that over and over and over and over. It's the mind adaptation of its own GOD that creates its own system. The avatar is creating its own design. And you look at a car in communication settings, it's a beautiful car, but it's created from what? Its own energy, vibration, frequency, and harmonics, and its own calculation setting of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. You put that all together, you got a communication line setting and directions. But you need a positional line track communication, all lines and location of console that correlates its system location navigations to its EM drive. It needs an EM drive, which is a flash drive communication. All line can do its navigation. Okay, so as a lines and line interference in all calculation system, this just is a remember to everybody through how to calculate and modify. You don't go to school, you won't understand. The frequencies are getting higher, guys. And what happens if the frequency goes higher and higher and higher and higher? Your Earth goes higher and higher and higher and higher. You have to be in balance at that location setting. Right? It's going to get more complicated if you don't understand your track communication lines. Adaptation line interference, intuitive line rotation position. It's all calculated and modify how you see your set location inside position. Okay? That's what it is. Stay in your vision line settings. Know exactly how to reiterate line calculation settings, location, dialect, or anything to dilation, or anything in the correlation system of panels, or anything calculation to a system. Try to understand the geometric operation of your line conditioning line system, how it works in the location system, right? All right, so today we got a powerful line stream. You guys come into 7 lines into disk layers. Now, 72 disk line center line interference is secured over pi. That correlates line interference to your EM drives. Now, EM drive location navigation line settings. We're going to travel calculation to Saturn. Saturn location to its flash drive communication setting and recourse location to its system. We're going to travel lines of relays and center lines of portal line rotation to your position line calculation setting in a dimensional cell set location system. The conditions of founders of space has to understand the security line, division line rotations. So we're going to set up 1 containing lines of zeros in operation of space command. Let me say it again. 1 containing lines of zeros in a space command center location of security perimeter line rotation. The product of line setting, product line connection height center interference is understand the foundation location of graph line streams, foundation location of space, foundation location sent to Earth. Ooh, look at that. Rotations, center position, atmosphere, 3 line signature lines, position locations. Okay, your DNA and your chakra set is infinity 8. Okay, it's very simple to understand locations. So you take those 8 infinity line centers of core lines from 0 to 12, boom, infinity position location of portals of travel. So all those infinity 8s turn into a flywheel. Correlation, position, attraction. Your vision lines and anything that film project location of lights infused location to your moon line sets, lines gets calculation stream in position to your film projections. And that's how you see things through vision, through pyramids. Without pyramids, you wouldn't be able to see vision. So it opens up a sequence location of the patterns, guys. It comes into correlation setting in directions, okay? So you have to really understand why you have pyramids in all set location. Without pyramids, you can't travel. All right, so we get a line signature, line stream interference. Now we got 3-point system. Now this is extremely complicated. You're not going to understand this. All right, so as I set these things up in set location setting, it's all calculated position to fluctuation. All right, we start with location set interference. Now that's complicated, right? But I got to set up the security line, center line interference. So one containing lines of 0 lines is a space line calculation system, and the cluster line or rotation interference of kinetic line interference of magnetic line position locations into a chronological line calculation streamline in a spherical sphere locations of metal line rotation and positions of Metatron. Calculation mesokick and metric grid worker line streamline interference and location setting and streamline rotations into data line box. Setting correlation electrical line, electrical fusion, electrical box line set location setting and high calculation. So they track communication lines and directions is understanding set lines of communication with settings in all communications. Now, rotation surface, set of correlation panels, setting direct signals, right? So remember, these are consoles of communications, all right? There's the triangulation line set, center calculation line directions, and 2 lines of set locations of 1 and 2 positions of perimeters, okay? Console lines of 3 line settings, arrow line direction, and position of 3 set locations. Right. So father has to set the console line center streamlines the security perimeter line rotation of flash drive to its EM drive location setting. So console line communication, center line directions. So I'm just going to set up the conditions line center interference and travel communication with system. So it gets complicated because you got to understand the center calculation lines. I'm going to do this very quick. Rotation surface and set location setting and perimeters of perimeter line centers. Center calculation streamline and set location system one way. Opposite direct location system and the other way line settings, rotation surface, triangulation line directions, and set locations. Okay, now we take the line center line interference of the capsule, we set up the EM drive. Okay, EM drive line settings and set location system, 1 perimeter line rotations, EM drive location settings. Now, directing signals and set lines of security is understand the set location line and rotations, 1 position, 2 positions, and 3 flux capacitor positional or track line communications. All right. So flux capacitor lines, we take the triangulation, we circle line, we travel line centers of point system location into the center line communication system. See how it travels? Okay. You guys have to understand the modern navigation location setting. You're creating the line setting to its position of its capsule to its EM drive. It's a flash drive line calculation setting of its own navigation to a system of its console. Understand the correlation setting as security perimeters and parameter line rotation position location in a security system. Sending direct signals as a location setting in flux capacitor communication. Okay? So this is about understanding how to coordinate lines of higher calculation settings. So we have a travel line, center line interference, and set location and position. In the center position, right? Now that correlates line centers of 1, line position of 2, and position of 3 in set location setting directions. Okay? So we get the 3 line setting, we set location of center, and line condition high system. It gets complicated, right? Now, we take the line center of the capsule, we set lines of communication. It redirects location of signals. Okay, it travels to higher calculation streamline. Okay, so it's getting bigger, right? So the center calculation line interference, we take the outer line rotation interference into 1 signal, into 2, into 3 set locations of travel. See, indicates location settings, right? Now, the indicating line interference, we take the line connections of 3 set locations of A lines. We take the A line rotations and top signal location of travel settings. So you have travel locations. Okay. Now, in that rotation surface, you have to learn how to use the Y line setting. The Y line center locations and center positions. That's signal location settings into your line setting. Triangulations, box, triangulations, and position of box and center locations. See? All right, so it gets interesting. Now we set line calculation setting, redirect line setting, and the line communications to your pyramid set line connections on travel position. See, right there. Boom, pyramid set. All right, so we scan line, the center line, ground lines, operation surface, locations, and directions, right? Now, this center line is calculation setting. Now, we don't set up location system until we understand the atom line rotation surface and 3 set location of centers. Spots, chalk or line center rotation surface location and directions, right? This is all through navigations to its EM drive. Okay, so sending line signatures is a 6-line string. The line connects a cross line position, right? Okay. So in that rotator line interference, we set communications to line settings in position of alpha line rotations into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 location setting directions, right? Wave and central line set line conditions of entering graph lines, rotation surface, in 2-line position. Okay. So we center line to its track line in calculation setting to its solar connection line setting, to its EM drive, to its navigation, to its console, to its sail. It's all set up. Okay. Security perimeter line interference of pyramid line rotation, center line conditions of box line. So we set lines of 6 locations in travel. Set location line conditions of box locations of travel. And set locations. See how powerful it is? Screenshot that. It's amazing how it comes to location in your system, all through navigation. Okay? Done by equation. Now that's a 1 central line setting. Okay. Okay, let's see. Let's get in directions. Okay, how's it going? Gyps, set lines calculation in Geneva, lines of Chris, all calculation position, all levels of Jean, Danielle. Let's see. We're in set location alignments and setting directions, but I'm just showing you navigation line conditions in the drive. How it's set up. Okay. Yeah, they're saying console division line setting. Okay, so we're going to keep that in the signal, and then we come into signature line stream. All right, it gets complicated. Now we're going to 0 line rotations, blocking line service locations, centers, balance line calculations, sending directions, console calculation on stream with Fibonacci's of 3 lines, and 3 set location directions. Now you have to really understand how this modifies the set location line directions. 1 signal line interference, 1 outer line rotations, flex capacitor communication of pi, set line conditionized system. 3 line centers in position of 12 and set location settings, right? Tracks lines of high line interference of 12 lines into 1, 2, and 3 set locations in the center. Okay? So I really understand the travel calculations to its clock lines. Okay, the founders of space line has to understand the metric scales and set lines of travel to its moonline rotation surface and set location at high calculation line direction and position of operation. Okay? Now, pi direction of timelines. Position of 12 lines in 1, 2, and 3. Okay? That's 3 center line interference. 1, 2, 3 line center location is position of 15 line settings and set locations, that direct location system. That's 15 million miles perimeter. Parameter line centers and sector correlation settings and travel communications. See? 6 line setting rotation, right? Console calculation line, streamline interference, and triangulation of 3 set location directions. Now, this directs signals and set lines and position locations to your diamond core lines, the rotation surface location calculation stream. So we take the 0 lines and center lines and operation surface. We set line conditions at 6 position locations of half pipe. Center line conditions equal lines, Merkabah lines of north, west, south, and east, and the center communication of center position. See? Center position. Box lines and 2 box lines, electrical line and infusion, rotates the surface, travels calculation lines, and 2 lines of direct location to its moon of operation surfaces applications. Okay? Now, indirect signal, we set up the perimeter line setting. So we had a 12 line sector. The clock line sets line rotation surface into a Fibonacci line direct line setting to a paradigm shift location setting, direction of system. Complicated, isn't it? It's all line communication, done by equation, all right? So the 12 line center is set up. We're going to set location settings, and we're going to track communications back into graph lines and console communications to its capsule lines of the EM drive. Directing signal lines to triangulation, setting position levels, console communication to its settings, and track line communication to its settings of 2 line rotations and position. It's all set up. Travel line centers, we keep that line center interference, come position location operation to its surface. Directing signals and location system of circ lines. The circulatory line-to-line rotation interference is 6 over pi, 12 line signature lines, and 12 center line rotations, and 12 calculations at 12 grams. Setting calculation line and rotation interference is set location setting and direct signal location to its formula of its equation. Okay? All right, so we get in that line in the rotations. We're going to keep that in track lines. Now we center communication lines of 0, bracket location of center lines. So we got 0 line, 0 line, 0 line, and 0 line of 4 calculation stream. So that's 1, position of 2, position of 3, position of 4 set locations. Now it gets tricky because we take the 1 lines and operation surface in set locations. We take the 3 lines, the center lines, and ground line, shift line, rotation surface locations. And we take the 4 generation line stream, it's at locations high setting, crosses stream lines in position of traction. Now, directing line centers at 2, we set lines of perimeter, 2 lines of 3. Travels calculation line interference. So that's 3 lines, travel communications, back and forth line, negative or positive sublocation attractions. Now we take the 3 lines at 2, 3 lines equal lines at 2, 2 lines equal locations of 5. 5 line centers of 7, inside location setting, direct location of 2. That's 2 over pi inside through calculation line and directions. That puts into 72 line tracks and center line rotation and sun communication setting and directions. All right, so you guys are in 72 line signature now. The phenomenal location setting directions. All right, so we're going to keep that in signature lines. We're going to come in back line, center line interference in location of console communications into its capsule of the EM drive. We circle the EM drive line rotation surface that travels this line, center line interference in direct location to its calculation of its Hubble. Hubble lines its indicate line interference into 1, in position of 2, in position of 3, attract locations. Right? So you have center locations of pi lines and 3 lines of interline rotation, sending calculation, molecular direct communication, sending direct signal locations operation. Done by equation. All right. So we leave that in signal. We set line calculation settings. Now we redirect signal set location system of 0 line calculation setting. So 1 line and calculation lines, Gattellian line rotations. We've got a K line interference location on kaleidoscope. Kaleidoscope location is settings into box lines into triangulation line settings, pyramid line rotation. 4 line track lines, calculation lines, 0 gravity and rotation surface. Now in that direct signal, the triangulation line sets a new perimeter lines, a 0 line rotation surface and ground lines position. Now this opens up the signal line in position location to its settings. Okay. So in that direct signal, we calculate modify through 0 line, 0 calculations, and 0 lines of high center location to high setting interference. Triangulation line setting in direct locations in position. And we cross the signal lines of triangle lines of box line and the downshift cross line stream location, directing signals and set location to your line setting in your connections to your test right location settings and directions. Done by equation. It's all set up. So in that line, it links lines of communications. Now the continuing line interference, we save that center location, so we come in rotation surface. Now directing signals is understanding how to set location of 0 lines in position locations. Okay, so I'm just going to add the 0 line rotation surface here. Okay, so we go into the solar graph line setting and directions. All right, all 0 line rotation interference and position locations. We start with this location settings, right? So the 0 line center lines, the 2 lines of 2 track lines, and rotates the surface into a cluster ball. So the position track lines, calculation, setting, directions, and set locations. Right? I can't do outline streamlines because Father doesn't want that settings. I got a set location, all setting, interference, and travel communications, all levels of calculation, setting, and directions. All right. Now, setting communication line direction is understanding how to set up lacing lines of communications to direct the signals, crossing line settings, and line interference. And we have a separation gap that opens up signal line rotation to its setting to a Fibonacci line swirl and set location of travel and set location of directions. Okay, that directs the signal location settings. So you actually can see the UFO above line rotations in position of the center line. Okay, so it's kind of like that. Okay, so center line, we have the 0 line rotation surface and set location of ground lines, operation set connections. Now this opens up signal. Now we split the division locations in the moon cycle. Moon cycle line, center line interference, and travel communication to its settings and directions. Now this directs line signal location as 1 console, calculation 1 graph line setting, 1 lines equal location of 0, line conditions of 0, and condition of 0. Okay. So you take the 1 line as center, you take the equal line calculation setting into arrow lines of up and position of down. What's above, what's below. Same calculation of 0 line operation center and calculation directions. Directing lines as 0, center calculations, and equal lines, center calculations, and all lines, center calculations, and center calculation lines at 3 set location directions. Now this directs the signals. So we set panels, rotation surface location calculation line, and rotation position location calculation line, and direction high signal and position location operation to its system. Okay? Done by equation. All right. Woo! All right, so we routers. Electrical streamlines and set lines and calculation direction settings. It's all position, location, track communications, right? So this is where we come into all set lines. Okay, 1 line center interference, track communication direction settings, inline communications. So we have center communications and direct signals. Saturn calculation line direct locations in the two settings. Triangulation line setting and position of box line and set location and directions. Now this directs the signals center lines of center communications into two out of line rotation. Directing the lines of panels, electrical line infusion, set lines of calculation and travel lines. Indirect signals and set location system and high calculation. Okay? That my equation. So the metric scales of the triangulation of box line is now set at location to its own setting of its own capsule. Like I said, the capsule line interference is set location settings. Comes in east line wing into lines of north line in set location of travel. The travel line mechanism line interference, we take the energetic ball line, rotation surface, zero lines, zero locations, lines, and location settings. Same calculation of 9 lines, equal line interference with 3 sets of lines of here, 3 set lines of here, and 3 set lines of here. Triangulation line setting and direct signals, and 3 set location setting and center. Okay? So equal line calculation of 0 lines equals 9. 9 line center line interference. 3 track calculations of windows and set location of 3 set lines calculation to its console calculation and its navigation to its EM drive line interference and drive communication setting direct signal locations into its console communication line interference of triangulation line interference of 2 out of line rotation interference into box location setting in line calculation settings graph lines 12 line rotation surface. Done by equation. All right. Where we are through high signature line settings, new codes in the crystal grid, location settings, securing lines, tubes growing up and around grid lines. Yeah, but it's very powerful when we come into set location settings to really understand how to use location of the system. 0 lines, the operational line set locations, right? Setting up structure, design location of all perimeter line rotations and positions. Okay, these slicing lines, that's communication settings, so we keep that signal. And we come back in this line set location of directions. Okay. So now we center the calculation line directions of 0 lines of operation. Let's colorate the line setting and travel communications. All right. Travel communications and 2 line set location settings. Right? See the intelligence? Hello. It's looking at you. All right. 1 containing line centers and 2 circle line settings. All set at location. All right. All right, so setting that direct signals, we come in backline and line rotation interference into position the Merkaba. Now the Merkaba sets line calculation streamlines the 0 line operation surface. So we come into graph line setting and direct signals, travel communication triangulation, travel communication direct line centers, timestamp line condition box line surface. Now it gets complicated because we set up a 0 line set lines and high line rotation interference and set location of center. Now that rotates the surface location going in this direction line settings and travel communications directions. Directed signals, travels line, 0 line rotations, cross line signals, and set location direction settings. Directed signal lines and triangulation of 3 set location of point system. Okay? Point system, pi line settings, pi direct location setting directions. All right? That's my equation. All right, so we see that in signals. Now in that direct signal, it's really interesting where we go in position to its console communication settings. It's really interesting when you set line condition new ground lines of operation location security perimeter location system. So we take the 72 line setting, equal line calculations into box line and set locations, right? Triangulation line, and direct location system, right? All you guys have to understand, the triangulation here and center line, position location, this is what you are in position of traction. That's all it is. Triangulation up, triangulation down, center position locations. This is your solar plex location. Okay, that's the 4 lines. 4 line centers, line rotations, calculations of 3 lines and 3 lines into double helix and travel communication. Okay, that's all it is. So getting into that signature line setting, we come into higher volumes of calculation of calculus. Now redirect line interference. So we take the EM drive, calculation line interference, and set locations to a CPU. This computes as line interference in set location settings. Box line and perimeter lines of Saturn and set location to directions. There's Saturn and calculation lines and 2 line streamline location settings. Okay. So it calculates its dimension in its metric scales, in its energy line stream, into its compute system, in its probe location of its units, and set location of travel. Directing signals, line centers, and 3 set location of energetic wave patterns. Directing the line setting, travel calculation line, all calculate, modify, and set location height, center interference, and position of traction. Done by equation. Center calculation lines of 0. Center calculation lines of 0. And center calculation lines of 0 line rotations into calculation setting into new position locations of direct location system. See it inside line? Let's go through black surface and surface location system. So this is what it is. Okay, this is what it looks like. And also location setting and directions. Setting up position location and traction. Inside position. Okay. How to set it up is how to set up the console communications to your capsule calculation line setting. Okay. Very powerful. Okay, waiting on signal. Setting direct line signals and set locations back, and then that's line of rotation, setting location to the system. All right, so we basically put a block line channel and box line rotations into its position of diamond line setting. 0 lines, equal line calculation setting, coming in line interference, like interstellar levels, cross line stream. Dash lines, equal lines of 12 set location and directions. Okay, so connects lines of 0 line, operation surface, and then calculations to its calculation. So it comes in at 4 diamond core line settings, northwest, south, and east is set location and directions. Setting calculation, triangulation, triangulation line setting directions. It's all set up. Triangulation interline rotation interference comes into a Hubble, sets position of tractions, center calculation of the 0 line operation surface. Okay, done by equation. So the clock lines of 0 is now in center, inline center locations in triangulation, and position locations is diamond, and position location higher set calculation strain. Directing signals is that location, right? So we center calculations, we do line strips, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 location setting directions. Directing settings, crossing streamlines, center line rotation, and calculations. Opposite surface, location of center, and direct signal. Okay, that's done by equation. So we wait on that signal, and we come back line, center line interference, and set location system, and direct signals into kaleidoscope location. So we take lines of triangulation and set lines of center and position a box. Now the box line, center line, and position location, higher set location, and its theta rotates its surface line conditionalized system up to reception line stream. Now, if you look really, really close, you can see the dimensional line walk. Sets calculations, settings, and position locations, operation. The triangulation comes line connecting to your visionary cortex line settings and direct signals and set location to your pyramids and center calculation. See? Travels through. There it is. Done. Ooh-ah! Okay, so in that position line traction, we come back into this line setting. Right from the very beginning, line conditionalized center interference, track communication system. Now it's all set at line interference. Now the center position location is all levels of travel. Now we're going to go through coloration line stream. We go through the indication lines of red. We change red lines at 2 positions, 2 positions, 2 positions, 2 positions at 3 lines. We colorate the line, center line interference in metric scales. All lines are colors of dot line signals, is that location of lines and position locations all in red signal. This correlates lines of box line, triangulation line setting locations into 1, 2, and 3 and set locations no directions. Done by equation. Perimeter line, center line interference is set location setting is on set location to its system. Navigation location to pi. It's all set locations to its capsule and its space command of its carrying line division, line rotation of its EM drive of center calculation. It's all done. All right, so how we do with the equation line settings? Streaming smooth lines of sequence operation is normal, nominal. Yeah, oh yeah, it's in line center locations and position track lines. That's right. So truly understand how this all works now, okay, through your security positions of perimeter line settings. You have to understand how to use the lacing line communication to all position lines of its console communication. Right? All right, so that's all set up. Everything is all set up. Everything is all set up, location and travel settings. But it's so powerful once you understand how to use the travel communication in your system, right? All right, so in the signature line, setting line, and rotations, we come into 2 setting lines of set locations in Pluto, 2 lines of set lines, and 3 set location directions. Okay. Now, setting lines of center line is circle line rotation. The reason why it's red because it's setting up its new perimeter line, stream line, set location of travel communications. Now, it's interest location line setting, but this is calculated and modified inside the line condition system of its time reactor and set location of center position. Okay. Calculation lines of triangulation lines in line connections to your pyramid line rotations into the lexers and all calculations of the cosmic plane, serpent plane, and all calculations to do with streamline. Directing signals to set location line interference. Now we come in line setting. So we set up the panel line. We're going to a black surface that rotates line. Center line rotation is center communication is center line rotation. Okay. Now we set up a Hubble line position of 2 line sectors and set location as center position of operation. That correlates the solar graph line as center line rotations into your connections. Remember, it's all calculated and modified in center position. Okay. So I'm changing frame lines and set location of travels in a 9 line setting line position location of 0 calculation. Okay. So what it's doing is traveling line signatures, setting calculation line directions, and set location system. Okay. So travels lines, center lines, infinity out. Travels lines back into moon set location of setting and rotation surface and set location of directions. Right? That's the equation. Okay. It's all connected to the energy line hub and line center line direct location system. All connect line settings when it comes into all set locations of Pluto of operation. Okay. Multipass. Now it's all set up. So we all have to understand how to travel through line settings locations. So your hangars, guys, get in that location of its code system. Okay. We got 32 track lines and 27 line center rotation interference and travel communications, directing signals. So we're waiting on line interference. So it's putting this together and understanding this in location setting. Okay. So it's all connected when you create. And when you start creating, you understand the design. It's not why you're creating, it's how it's created. It's not the why, it's the how. The how is the connection, and the body is the consciousness of just reaction. You're reacting to everything through provision that's connecting to your visionary set locations. That's how you understand these line calculations of forming the sub-equation locations. All right, so we center position locations. We come into coloration line change, bracket line, center line interference, and direct signals. The concept of communication lines is 0 lines and rotations of black line rotations and calculations. So we come to 0 line, 0 line, 0 line, 0 line. Equal line conditions of 9, 9, 9, 9 is location setting, right? So we got 9 lines, 9 lines, 9 lines, 9 lines. It's getting complicated, right? Correlated line interference is set location of 1, 2, 3, and 4 set locations and setting locations, directing signals. Now that line interference comes into 5, comes into 6, comes into 7, comes into 8, comes into 9, and comes into 10, and line conditions on levels, comes into 11, and comes into 12 location setting and set location directions and line rotation surface and position of the sun connections. Okay? So we have to really understand how to use the digital line rotation interference in the AK line condition system. So it's kind of like an under relay line rotations, which is an underscore. So an underscore is an underline. It's an under relay line program. So it relines its calculations. So we put the underline settings and the 0 line rotation surface in the 4-track communications under the 0. Indicate line interference. We cross the signal location system and track communication as center lines. All right. So it's calculated and modified into line calculation needs the graph lines and rotation surface and calculation streamline, the keyboard lines and rotation to a system. So father's understanding your keyboards of activation to your settings in your timeline sequence. So setting direct line and line and rotation sets 4 lines, setting calculations into 3 line zeros, calculation of 3, 3 in set location settings, set location to 3, 3 in set location lines of space and time, directing signals, line calculation settings of 1, 2, and 3, calculation null line interference into 3 in line conditions of 4, 4 equals location of 7, 7 coordinates line interference of center communications, 8 line channels, 9 lines of set location, and 7 in direct location of box line rotations, lacing lines of 2 communication and 3 lines of communication. Center directions. Okay, it's all set up now. Your T reception line is now in a 4 lines of 3 line rotation surface. Its coordinate interference is 7 digital frame setting. Its line calculations in position of code line activation stream locations. It indicates line and rotation of settings to its Hubble of communication to set lines in its console calculation line setting, indirect signals to set location system, and parameters of location lines of travel communication. Done by equation. All right. Yeah, drink your waters and set lines at the calculation settings. Molecule structures of our water to drink. Technically, it becomes our, well, it's all set location now, set lines, the parameter line, rotation interference. But position on track line is now set up. Okay. You see the spool? So it's really understand how this all works for you in sideline conditions, right? So that's why I'm taking my time. I don't want to speed up line center. It's too much data. Plus you understand the track communication, operation balance, 2 box line rotation surface, travel calculation line settings, direct signals, location of 6, position of 4. I got to do this very fast. 3 line centers of 3 set location in the center. What is set location of center? 88. Right? So 8 line center lines, center line communication, rotates its surface, location, line setting. You guys have to understand how to get in calculation settings of 6 lines and numbers and 4 lines in track and 3 line setting parameters in set location of Fibonacci lines of 2 line settings and 1 lines of zero gravity line rotation, surface, location, and directions. So you have to learn how to use the number line interference because the numbers correlate settings to all calculation system to its planets of calculation line directions in 3 set locations of a setting location. That's how you create line center locations of numbers and positional planets in all direct locations of its coordinates. Right? So, of course, it doesn't make any sense because you're not in your connection to your realities. You're still in your illusion. You got to get out of the equation line setting all through location of vibration. See? Everything that we do is vibration. Our body is reacting to its vibration. Okay? All right, so when we get into the signals, we calculate and modify. The center lines of calculation, the bracket line, center line interference, 1 hanger line rotations, positions all levels, line calculation, sending your pyramid line rotations center. Equal lines, visual line rotations, and velocity line connection line center and acceleration. So this is velocity line, volumes lines of 2 line tracks, graph line, stream lines, and lace line communication. Directing signals to set lines at high calculation lines in set location of travel and set location. Okay? Everything is in center position. Everything's in center position. Okay? Understanding the Hubble of communication. Right? This is a Hubble of communication, right? Center calculation line strips and center line calculation settings and setting. Directing line centers to scan communications into colossal lines of information to set line conditions to your crop circle location. Okay? All right. So we set the metric scale. Now, electrical line infuses its location of box line. It's a circuit panel and rotational lines to a box line rotation of data stream. Okay, so that the data stream is a 4 set location setting. Okay, founders of space has to get into 4, into 6, into 8, into 12 line center location, your timeline sequence and set locations. Done by equation. It's all set up. So he's connected to his own Omni universe line setting location streamlines of data box line settings. Okay, to modify how he sequences pattern communications of travel lines into location to its direct location system. It's all done through equation. All right. Okay. How are we doing through equation line settings and streamlines of visionary cortex location settings? Scanners and sonars are clear and smooth. Well, that's exactly what's going into that line conditionized system, right? Try to understand the concept of that, okay? Equal line, center line interference, and traffic communication and direct signals, right? And remember, a man or woman that thinks all the time has nothing to do but think about thoughts. You're not creating anything. You're thinking too much. Get out of the thinking, get into the knowing, get into the concept of already setting. In that direct location, the mind has already set a location to the system. So it's already created it. When you give me something through set location, I see it through creation. That makes sense? I don't see the structure of the design. I see the completion. So when you understand setting lines of communication, really gets into the formation line settings. It operates all calculations to its positions, all through travel. Okay. All right, so we're going to go line, center line interference, and traffic communication line settings to its dimensional sail, to its location, line center interference. Now, inlet and position, we have to colorate the line settings. Now, I'm adding frames. I'm adding coloration lines of hieroglyphic location of channels. That's only in red lines is location setting. Tomorrow will be in the Fibonacci line swirl. 3 set lines is calculation of streamlines and 3 set locations. All right, see the red lines? So it's in sequence of patterns and then correlations of balance and correlation line direct locations into 4 settings, right? Because you guys are going to track lines of 7, right? So that's 4 lines and 3 set location setting. So we center line communication center, center calculation line directions, center direct locations, and 3 line settings of center communications. It's all set up now. 4 over lines of box line rotations and position of line conditions. 4 line setting, signal location alphabetical line, streamline interference. And 3 set location of circle line calculation settings and your pyramid activation line interference. 4 over 3 line position of pi, cord line interference of vision or cortex line setting puts you in a 72 track communication of phenomenon center so location of settings. Done by equation. We're done. Roll done. So we're good. The astrologic lines is set up location to its perimeters. The calculation line interference, security line position locations, the allocate line interference, the traffic communication is now set up position to its all calculation. All right, so I'll give you guys lines at 5-10 minutes. I'm good started. Adios.